Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. I'm chatting with Dave Erfle. We're going to be focusing on the precious metals as well as some geopolitical news and a little update on some of the stocks Dave is watching. Dave is the founder and editor of the Junior Miner Junky. I will post a link to that website in the show notes. Dave, just a quick recap. We have gold over 25.50, silver right back at $30. Gold price especially continues to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and the majors, many of them are still doing well. I know the argument continues to be low volume and the juniors not doing anything. Let's start off with some of the recent news out of Mexico. I know you updated your subscribers when you were away on your thoughts on that proposed open pit mining ban. And on the back of that, man, a lot of Mexican focused stocks were lower, a lot of them being silver stocks. Dave, how are you viewing this? Is this an opportunity in these stocks? Is this a wait and see just to see what could come out of the government? What are your thoughts?
Well, as far as specific companies, it's hitting companies that don't even need an open pit permit. So that's where the opportunity lies, really. I mean, in companies that require an open pit permit right away, if you're invested in a company that is at the permitting finance stage and they need an open pit permit in the short to intermediate term, then their stocks are getting hit hard. This banning of open mines and permits in AMLO's party, who is outgoing, he's still president until the end of September. And then Claudia takes over in October. And I think they were two votes short in the Senate. And so what happened just recently was it passed again in the lower house, and the Senate vote, I believe, is coming up. And Claudia won with a bigger majority. So companies and investors are worried that, hey, this is going to get passed. But Claudia is a business-oriented president. She's a very smart businesswoman, and she knows that with green policies that Mexico supports, they're going to need silver. I think in open pit mines, I think is 1 or 2% of their GDP. So I wouldn't be surprised, even if this does pass, if it's an open pit in an area that's not highly populated and there's no major water issues, then maybe there'll be a special issuance of permits. But people, of course, are selling first and asking questions later as far as their stocks are concerned. So as far as my companies are concerned, the companies that I cover, that I own in my newsletter, there's two of them that are directly affected, and I have two others that don't need open pit permits. So the two that do require open pit permits, the one that I have is at the permitting stage and the finance stage. Their stock got hit pretty hard. And then the other company that I have is just at the PEA stage, and they're not going to be at the permitting stage for another 18 to 24 months. Their stock really isn't being hit that hard. And they're also financed to a construction decision by the end of 2025. So I have a lot of meetings scheduled with companies that are operating in Mexico, and several of them have deep connections with government officials in Mexico at Beaver Creek, which is coming up here in a couple of weeks. So I think I'll have a better handle on the Mexico situation once I talk to all these people at Beaver Creek here on September 10th through the 13th.
So, Dave, look, I get a lot of emails too saying, well, what have you heard? You talk to a lot of companies. What are the companies saying about this proposed open pit ban? I find that it can be very, in a way, jaded, though. When you talk to some of these companies, they're going to spin it in a very positive sense. So, what kind of questions do you ask them? What sort of feedback do you hope to get from these companies that, in all fairness, they can't say, man, we're done. There's no chance that we're going to get this permit because that ends their company.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel the best feedback I get is from companies. I've got good friends that are in management teams of companies operating in Mexico. They either have their permits or they're not going to need an open pit permit. So I feel that the feedback I get from these people is much more genuine. Yeah, because like you said, if you're a company and you're a single asset company and you're waiting for an open pit permit, and if you don't get it, your project is dead or delayed for a while, of course, then the feedback you get from that company is going to be all positive. but you're going to get more honest feedback from companies, like I said, don't need an open pit permit or they're already fully permitted.
I also get the argument that there is a change in government coming, and this outgoing president, look, he has wanted to be tough on mining. This is really a last ditch effort. So I do understand that argument. But again, look, these companies do need to speak favorably to it, and we don't know what the new president is going to do, even though she is much more business focused. Does that carry over to open pit mining right away? It's a tough narrative to play out because we don't know what the answer is. But boy, oh boy, some of those stocks did get hit. So if you do want to play that potential short-term trade, man, there's an opportunity there. Now, Dave, you were away for the last couple weeks. We had another M&A transaction that had some carryover into some other stocks. So Osisko Mining being bought out by Goldfields. It's just under a $1.6 billion USD transaction. Look, this is a nice transaction. Osisko Mining, another company, an advanced stage company getting taken off the board, but it was a carryover to some of the other stocks that revalued those stocks. What are your thoughts on that transaction? Even more importantly, that carryover.
Yeah, very, very positive for the sector, Corey. First of all, it was an all cash deal, and Goldfields already owned 50%. I did with Osisko Mining back in 2020, 2021. And with all the dilution and everything that's happened with the stock, I think I sold it at 40 or 50 cents less than what it was just taken over for. But as far as the sector is concerned, since it was an all cash deal, you saw a lot of people just go ahead and taking their profits right away and rotating those profits into other late stage juniors. You saw huge moves in many of the best late stage juniors out there. Huge white candles on the week that takeout was announced. And I expect more follow through on the M&A, especially when we got conference season coming up with Beaver Creek directly followed by the Denver Gold Forum. We usually see a positive announcement of either a merger of equal or a big takeover coming out of those conferences.
So when you see some of these stocks, the advanced stage juniors, see this kind of share price pop on the back of a transaction, what sort of follow through do you want to see outside of obviously them getting taken out? Is there any work those companies can do? There are any trading patterns that you like to see in their stocks?
Yeah, I mean, I've already seen some positive financings announced after that M&A was announced. These companies took advantage of the pop in their share price to raise money. I'd like to see more strategic placements in a lot of these juniors, because some of them, maybe they've got this fantastic project, but they really haven't got a strategic partner. So they don't have the access to capital they need to de-risk their project further. I'd like to see more of that. I'd definitely like to see more strategic deals taking place.
Yes, we would. Any deals, as we've said many times, M&A in any form, I think, is good for the sector. Just this Osisko Mining one, it was good because it actually provided other stocks some gains on the back of it in that whole revaluation of advanced stage assets. Dave, let's take a step back, and something that a few of our commentators have talked about, I've seen it on other commentators' sites, is that as good as gold is doing, it's moving up with the stock market. You look at the gold to S&P ratio, it's in a way kind of flat. Gold has outperformed at times, but a longer term chart shows that it's almost trendless right now. What does that tell you about the interest in the market and the overall market environment where money seems to be flowing in to the markets and to gold?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm seeing a lot of things right now line up. You see the US dollar has sank down to major support, the US dollar index at 100. It's become the most extreme oversold that I've seen it in quite some time. And then you take a look at the gold price, and it's closed above its monthly upper Bollinger Band that's rising pretty sharply for 4 of the past 5 months. And it looks like it's going to make it 5 out of the past 6 months on Friday, where it's closed above its monthly upper Bollinger Band. So it's getting overbought, and the US dollar is getting oversold. Gold has gone up with the stock market on hopes of rate cuts. So I'm thinking maybe we might see a sell the news scenario take place in not only the stock market, but in gold also, because it's due to consolidate. And September is notoriously a bad month for the gold price. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some consolidation here. There's good support at 2,500, but there's stronger support at 2,400 in the gold price. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that take place here because the stock market, it looks like it's starting to focus on the reason why the Fed is going to have to cut rates as opposed to the rate cuts themselves.
Yeah, we'll see what that stock market reaction is to that first rate cut, whether it's 25 basis points or 50 basis points, and then even more so what that guidance is. What have you noticed, Dave, or have you noticed anything when it comes to how the gold stocks, let's say something like GDX, that gold miners ETF, is performing compared to the S&P or the broad averages?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? In previous lead ups to recession downturns, that's what's on everybody's mind right now. Everybody's saying that okay, that the Fed is trying to engineer this soft landing, and the Fed is notorious for making policy mistakes. So everything's been pointing towards recession, the inverted yield curve for almost 2 years. And gold stocks are usually not spared from liquidation selling events. So if we see another liquidation selling event in the stock market, like we did when the Japanese carry trade unwound at the beginning of August, we could very easily see some more panic selling coming into the market. Gold stocks, are not immune to that. But with that being said, the gold complex tends to outperform most other asset classes, and it's usually one of the first movers after the Fed begins to cut interest rates. You take a look at the previous interest rate cutting cycles, 2001 to 2003, major bull market, 2009 to 2011, major bull market. And in 2020, we had a bull market for about 6 months. So that's what I'm concerned about as far as the gold stocks in the short term. But also, you've got GDX and GDXJ hitting multi-year strong resistance levels. I mean, GDX is right at an area where it's strong resistance going back to 2012. I don't think the GDX has made a weekly close above 41, and it's right around 39 right now since 2012. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some profit taking here. And like I said, September is usually a consolidation month for the gold price.
What about leadership from the major companies? The majors, it's almost like some of the juniors too, where we see a select few majors doing very well, even moving to all-time highs. But a lot of the other majors, they're doing okay, I guess. Kind of trading. They are trending higher, not like the juniors, where a couple juniors, maybe 20% of the juniors doing excellently, and the rest still very much in a bear market. But again, it's those majors. We need leadership from the majors to bring in bigger money to lead even the ETFs higher. What are you seeing within the major stocks?
Yeah, well, if you take a look at Newmont, right? Newmont, in relation to the S&P 500, it's been leading the gold stocks higher, which is what you want to see. I mean, they're the major, they're the big boy, they're the company that's twice as large as any other gold miner, and it's been doing its job. It's quietly, basically, leading gold stocks higher, and it's also been outperforming the S&P 500. Agnico is another bellwether. It's trading at all-time highs. Wheaton Precious Metals, it's trading at all-time highs. Royal Gold is trading at all-time highs. But like you said, a lot of the other stocks still have a lot of catching up to do. And as far as the sector is concerned, it's got a lot of catching up to do. I mean, the HUY is still 50% lower than it was back when it reached its all-time high in 2011 when gold got to 1900. So I mean, they've still got a lot of catching up to do, and their balance sheets are a lot more healthier now than they were back then, and they're going to need to start replacing ounces like we talked about earlier. The M&A is starting to heat up again, so we'd like to see that continue. But as far as the stocks are concerned, the leaders are concerned, they are now technically overbought on a weekly and some of them on a monthly basis. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some consolidation happening in these leaders also.
Hey, these leaders have been doing well and they have been generating some nice revenue. Question is, what are they going to do with that cash that they are sitting on? Anything else on the horizon that could provide this next leg higher for the stocks? Because gold keeps doing its work. A lot of news continues to go in the favor of the precious metals, which is why I think gold continues to do well. But anything on the horizon that could provide just another boost, especially for the underlying equities?
Yeah, the gold price, it's been outperforming inflation. That's the main issue that's been pushing the miners higher is their margins, right? So gold has been outperforming the stock market. It's been outperforming the CRB index. It's been outperforming oil, right? Oil's could be up to 50% of costs in a lot of these miners, especially Newmont. They've got these huge open pit mines, and oil is a huge cost for them. And if you look at the gold price, it's reaching a major area of intrigue as far as I'm concerned, and as far as mining costs are concerned. It's getting close to its CPI adjusted high. In 1980, gold got to 850. And even though we've had several major gold bull markets since then, especially the one from 2001 to 2011, gold never reached its CPI adjusted all-time high. And it's getting close to that now, which is around 2650, 2670, right around there. So I think once the gold price gets above 2700, then it'll be above its CPI adjusted all-time high. And that's going to gain a lot of attention. And these margins are really going to start to increase for these majors. And I think it's going to put gold stocks finally on the radar of some of these generalist fund managers. I mean, we've had back-to-back quarters of blowout earnings for several of these companies, yet we still haven't really garnered any generalist interest. We've already started to see some sector rotation out of Magnificent Seven stocks into smaller cap issues, but really not much into gold stocks yet. And as we know, this sector is so tiny, all it'll take is just 1% of that money coming into gold stocks, and it could really move them a lot higher. So I really think once gold stocks get on the radar of these generalists, what'll put it on the radar is gold breaking out of its CPI adjusted all-time high of right around $2,700.
Man, I've heard that argument for so long that we just need 1% of the money in the markets to flow into these stocks, and think of how much higher they will be. It's true, right? This sector is still small. And actually, when you take a big picture look at it, it's actually probably gotten smaller compared to the overall market cap of the broad averages and even tech. But hey, that's a process. Just any sort of increase in volumes, interest is obviously welcome for any stocks. Dave, just to give us a little preview of Beaver Creek coming up, it is that conference where we get to meet one-on-one with management teams. And I know you share a lot of the companies you're interested in and your top lists with your subscribers, but what type of companies are you meeting with at Beaver Creek, and what are going to be your main themes that you're questioning them about?
Yeah, mostly developers, small cap growth oriented producers, a couple of earlier stage companies I'm meeting with. I'm still really not ready to jump into earlier stage companies just yet. I do own positions and cover some PEA stage companies, but nothing any earlier stage than that. But as far as what I'm looking to gain is information about access to capital, jurisdictional politics, permitting, especially because in some of these jurisdictions, they're top tier jurisdictions, but their permitting timelines are really starting to affect the share prices of these companies. They've done a great job in de-risking these projects. They've got multi-millions of ounces, but they're still several years away from getting environmental permits and mining permits in some of these jurisdictions that are very attractive. But these countries, these governments, they need to speed up these permitting processes. Everybody knows it. And I'm really looking forward to having conversations on what these mining companies are doing with these governments to speed up these timelines to get these permits.
Yeah, permitting still front of mind for a lot of people. And look, a lot of companies still going through permitting. And then it's always that next major step of financing these builds, which is still tough in this market. But anytime you have costs as high as building mines, look, that's just going to happen. But if we can get some more financing clarity, that also helps, and some more groups that are willing to finance project builds. Dave, thank you as always for your time. Again, Dave Erfle, editor of the Junior Miner Junky. Click that link in the show notes. Dave, thanks for your time this week.